The Guardian has run an interesting piece about Kemi Badenoch's speech this evening and her dramatic declaration that our country and all of Western civilization will be lost if the Conservative Party fails is in part a reasonable concern and in part an overblown personal lamentation. The call to save the Conservative Party is valid. The call to save Badenoch herself is not. She has already passed her political sell-by date and should recognise that her time as a serious contributor to politics in Westminster is over. However, her broader concern, the need for a robust Conservative opposition to Labour, is one worth considering. A functional democracy requires, in Britain, an effective opposition. Britain's adversarial political system is not designed for a single party rule, nor for an ineffectual or fragmented opposition. Badenoch's warning touches upon a real issue. If Labour is left unchallenged, its policies unchecked by rigorous debate, risk becomes stale, it risks becoming complacent, it risks becoming authoritarian, and the Conservative Party, despite its recent identity crises and internal squabbling, remains a necessary counterweight. If the Conservative Party isn't capable of doing it, then the Lib Dems need to step up and do it. And the media's obsession with a five person party called Reform UK is a nonsense as a credible opposition. And the problem about this authoritarianism is it's already there. The seeds of authoritarianism were planted by David Blunkett at the last Labour Party in the Home Office. They were nurtured and developed by Theresa May's Wittering Watering, and they flowered under Suella Braverman and Priti Patel in reverse order, of course. And that aggressive authoritarianism, which is pregnant in the laws about praying near abortion clinics, in the laws about dismissing the case for the case for asylum for any dismissing the case for citizenship for anybody who's come to Britain by a small boat smuggler or trafficker without regard for the reasons that they got into that situation in the first place. The whole point about being a refugee, being an asylum seeker, is that when you are fleeing a country, you're already dealing with illegal individuals, people who have been defined as illegal, because you are trying to leave a country. And that in many cases is an illegal act. So the fact that you would be involved with people who are illegal is part of the process of being an asylum seeker. The fact that some of them are smugglers and traffickers is part of the makeup of that illegality. And as an asylum seeker, you're not likely to be able to tell the difference between a good illegal and a bad illegal. People get swept up in this process. And for Britain to take this position that, these are good migrants and these are bad migrants, it's like Dickens talking about the undeserving poor. Or indeed George Bernard Shaw or Lerner and Lowe. It's inappropriate, and it's snobbish, and it's patronising, and it's wrong, and it's part of that authoritarian streak, which festered because there wasn't a viable opposition to dampen it down. Now, the Labour Party may have spent too long basking in the ideological purity tests of Corbynism, while the Conservatives, largely unopposed, reshaped Britain post-Brexit. And now, with the roles reversed, Starmer must not fall into the same trap, allowing the Conservatives to collapse into irrelevance while he moves into authoritarianism. A weak opposition, whether it be the Conservatives, the Lib Dems, or even Reform UK, creates an unbalanced democracy in Britain. Badenoch, however, is not the saviour of conservatism that she imagines herself to be. Her likening of her leadership to Trump's second term is misplaced bravado. Trump's appeal, whether one agrees with it or not, is built on a deep, loyal base and a capacity to dominate political discourse. Badenoch, by contrast, has struggled even to manage her own party's fractious infighting, let alone project an image of decisive leadership. Her poor performances at Prime Minister's questions and her tendency to conflate legitimate conservative concerns with culture war hyperbole. I mean, today, for example, when we are thinking about war in Europe, she talks about culture war. That obsessive, that obsessive nonsense of Kemi Badenoch has alienated as many people as it might have rallied. Her speech at the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, I've already talked about it actually, but I can't resist talking about it again. It reveals her reliance on familiar conservative talking points, her familiar conservative talking points, pronouns, climate activism, symbols of progressive overreach. Yet while she rails against these issues as forms of control, she fails to acknowledge the Conservatives' own failures in government. An ideological echo chamber, whether to the left or the right, is not a substitute for real policy-driven vision, and she fails to recognise the moment that we are in. She is wittering on the sidelines while serious issues are taking place in Paris and in Kyiv. Even her criticism of Keir Starmer's gesture of taking the knee in solidarity to Black Lives Matter feels like a desperate attempt to cling to divisive issues that happened long ago, rather than crafting a coherent alternative to Labour's policies. Populism, as she rightly notes, has become corrosive when it's anger without the ability to take action, and that is actually precisely what she is offering. Anger without the ability to take action because she doesn't know what she's doing. She's offering anger, fear, a sense of cultural siege without substantial policy direction, and her assertion that Western civilization is at risk of destruction, implosion, is a blatant exaggeration. Civilization does not rise or fall because of wokeness or because of Black Lives Matter or because of concerns about pronouns. It rises or falls because Russia is standing on the border. The collapse of a major party doesn't lead to instability, and in that sense, she's well, in the sense that the collapse of a major party does lead to instability, and she's right to raise the alarm. But her collapse doesn't lead to instability. The Conservatives have been in power for over a decade, and they find themselves in a position where they're struggling now to define their purpose out of power beyond the vague notions of saving Britain. The party's failure to renew itself, its over-reliance on this rhetoric rather than on finding substance, it led to electoral vulnerability. It's led to chaos after the election. And while Badenoch and others at the ARC decry climate policies as sinister and speak nostalgically of nationalism, they ignore the real issues facing our country today. The economic stagnation, the NHS backlogs, the sense of public fatigue with Tory infighting. And Badenoch is not the person to lead a Conservative revival. Let's be clear about that. She is correct that Britain needs a strong Conservative party, that Britain needs a strong government, and a strong government can be held to account, can be made stronger by a good opposition. So if the Tories implode, which they are absolutely at risk of doing under her leadership, the country risks a weak opposition or the rise of more extreme political alternatives. In many ways, I long for the moment that the Conservative Party diminishes and the Lib Dems take over. but I'm not sure we'll get to that point. At least not in time for the Lib Dems to capitalise on that. His Majesty's Loyal Opposition is not just a title, it's a responsibility. It's a crucial institution that keeps the government going, that keeps the government accountable, that holds the government to account and asks the right questions. And Badenoch has proven again and again and again that she cannot ask the right questions at the right time, that she's totally off track, as she is today. Totally off track. When Starmer is talking about the defence of Europe, she's talking about hurty words. Labour should not fall into the same complacency trap as the Conservatives did under Corbyn. Democratic stability demands a credible adversarial system, and Badenoch's belief in the necessity of Conservative renewal, for all her stupidity, is absolutely correct. Her belief in her own indispensability is not. She needs to go. If she truly cares about the future of the Conservative Party, she should step aside now and let someone else with competence take over the mantle before it's too late. Because at the moment, she is destroying almost everything that she says she cares about. She's we have to avoid a monoparty. That is, a government without an opposition. Not a uniparty, by the way. I don't believe the uniparty nonsense is true. The Conservatives exploited the weaknesses and the distractions of the Labour Party led by Jeremy Corbyn for far too long, and the Labour Party must not revel in the same nonsense with Badenoch, as she succeeds in obliterating the Conservatives. His Majesty's Loyal Opposition is an important part of the overall package. We must ensure a sound, two-party, adversarial system if we are to continue to trust in the democratic ideals of the UK.